Welcome to R&R Showtime with Robert.
And Ryan.
And today we will be talking about Lord of the Rings, the pair of buildings,
The Twin Spires,
a couple of structures,
The Empire Strikes Back,
the one after the Fellowship,
the one before Return of the King,
the one in between, just like your mom.
Oh, that's your mom.
Yeah, joke's on me.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers. That's what we're talking about today.
All right. So
we're going to start on a totally different topic first. Unrelated conversation we were having right before we were going to record the podcast. And it went something like Gollum got more kills than both Legolas and Gimli because he cast the ring into the mountain and killed all those orcs and the giant.
This should be saved for Return
Fisher.
of the King because that happens in Return of the King.
It does, but I'm not going to be in the mood to have that conversation anymore. I was just having it. Now I'm heated.
I mean,
I said that he didn't cast it into the fire. In fact, he literally went to his dying moment trying to prevent it from getting into the fire.
Yeah, but like if he as he was falling into the fire, he could have tossed it away from the fire. Instead, he decided to keep it with him.
Yeah, but that's
and held it in the fire. He did not save it.
Yeah, my point is that he did not cast it into the fire. So he did not score those kills.
He was the one holding it when it went into the fire.
Okay, my point is
who gets the kills?
If you put the ring on a chair and you push the chair into the lava, is the chair the thing that killed or destroyed the ring? No, it's the thing that pushed the chair into the lava.
It was the thing last holding the ring, which was the person who put it on the chair.
So the chair?
The person who put it on the chair.
No, I do not agree.
Well, at the very least, one of the three people at Mount Doom, whoever those people may be, because #spoilers, one of them is responsible for all those orc deaths.
Frodo pushed the ring, including the guy wearing it, into the lava.
A likely story.
So Frodo racked up the kills and actually got the most kills between him, Gimli, and Legolas.
I mean, the contest was always between those three, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, from the beginning.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So the Two Towers. Are you familiar with this one?
I've seen it a few times.
Let's go into the impressions then. I believe you let this slip in the first episode, or maybe it was off the mic, but this is your favorite of the three, correct?
Yes.
I think I'm inclined to agree with that.
Yeah. Is that all of your first impression?
Well, what makes it your favorite movie of the three?
Again, a lot of mine is based on more of like nostalgia, but yeah, going back to it, I just thought it was the most cool, epic. A lot of just, like crazy adventure-y, things going on. A lot of battles, a lot of like exciting fights, a lot of like dramatic moments. I mean, there's battles and dramatic fights and things that happen in the Fellowship, but it is more of that beginning movie, and the Two Towers is just, right from the start is just things happening, story progressing and moving along.
I think I kind of agree.
Action, sense of urgency, really.
I think that's really where it's at. I think of the three movies, this movie has the most interesting stuff going on for the Hobbit characters, because this is the first movie where we really get to see the interplay between Sam, Frodo, and Smeagol. We get that in Return of the King, but it's more about the manipulation of Smeagol trying to turn Frodo, which is interesting, but I don't think it's as interesting as seeing the development of Smeagol as a character. Honestly, I think Smeagol's the highlight of the film. That and like the highlights of the film are the scenes with Smeagol, and I suppose the battle. It's Helm's Deep and Two Towers, right?
Yes.
All right. And then also the trees, the Ents. They're cool.
Yeah, man. Trees that talk. pretty tight.
Yeah. Honestly, like those parts of the movie were like slow, but every time it went there, I was just like, cool, this is chill. I like this.
Yeah, I mean,
It should be the boring part of the movie, but I enjoyed just the hobbits chilling in the forest with the magic trees.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're not magic trees. They're like
They're yeah. I just saying.
Wow, Robert, why do you gotta argue semantics? They're just basically magical trees. Shut up. Yeah. Well, I guess let's just get into a recap.
Yeah, there's a lot to recap. Though this is the shortest of the three as well, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, they get a lot more done in a lot less time.
Exactly.
When I say a lot less, I mean still 3 hours, but
4 hours with the cut. But I think this is the only one that falls under 4 hours with the extended edition.
Yeah.
So this movie starts with essentially a flashback to the first movie.
Yes.
This is a quick note I actually want to make. It's interesting that this is the shortest movie, and also of the two sequel movies, this and Return of the King, this is the one where I watched it and thought, is it just replaying like the same exact scenes from the first movie? And at certain points, it really feels like it does. I think it plays the exact sequence showing the orcs being birthed from the mines and the Uruk-hai being birthed. I believe that I want to say that I watched that happen in Fellowship and then watched it happen again in the Two Towers. I cannot be certain of that, but
I do not I do not believe that's true, actually. I'm not sure that they reuse those scenes. They might have they do probably have some similar scenes of like where there's like the forging and putting, like they're sort of breeding the troops and stuff, but
maybe it's not the same exact scene, but it got the same point across, and so it felt very familiar. But I will say the more notable instance of it repeating a scene was done much more effectively because you're getting a enhanced perspective on Gandalf's fall. And so that's where the movie begins, with his fall, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to start pitting it up?
Yeah. So, I mean, basically we do get a flashback. We kind of get this pan out of a mountain as we zoom in and we come into Moria. Gandalf's there facing down the Balrog, and we see him fall as we did in the Fellowship. But now we follow Gandalf as he falls down. He, captures his sword, he plunges down the Balrog, and they fight until literally they, like this really excellent kind of, cinematography. It's just artistic shot of just like this plummeting fire into this huge underground lake after they fell for, who knows how long. And then right as they, hit the water, Frodo wakes up, and we have Frodo and Sam, and they are journeying through,
Middle Earth. Yeah,
Middle Earth, heading to Mordor. And they are in this sort of craggly, sort of like mountainous area that, where they have to literally climb up, practical walls to see up above where they're going. And they are essentially lost. And
we get to see a practical use of the rope that Galadriel gave to Sam in this scene, where he's able to tie a knot securely enough for them to go down, but on a single tug makes it fall off.
Yeah. And but at some point they realize that they are being followed, and they sort of set up a little ambush for their follower, and they capture Gollum, who has been following them, as we mentioned in the last podcast, since, before Moria. So they capture him, and he whines and says, like, please let me go. Oh, I'll help you. I'll help you get along. Just let me get out and let me out this rope.
Yeah, they put the elven rope around his neck, and he says that it burns him.
Yeah, it burns us. And they, Frodo decides to let him go, sort of like, threatens him a little bit, but says like, all right, lead the way, and blah blah. And he's like, all right, yeah, hey, I'll lead the way, no problem. We don't quite understand Gollum's motives at this point. Like, is he just why is he following? I mean, he's bound to the ring. We know this to a point, and he wants it. He needs to stay near it. And yeah, so he decides that he's going to guide them out, and they proceed onwards from there. And now the movie jumps around a lot, and I've seen it, a dozen times, but
do you want to do the thing where we follow one storyline at a time through to its conclusion? Because really none of them properly intersect, except like technically what Merry and Pippin does affects what happens with Helm's Deep, but they are essentially separate stories. This movie follows 3 separate stories.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, well, I guess that might be a logical way to do it.
So we can just continue with Sam and Frodo because it's the least impactful on the other 2 stories going on.
Yeah, so to say, and obviously, if you haven't watched Lord of the Rings, you should go watch it. And I don't know why you're actually listening to this podcast. But if you have, we're just going to go along that track, and you'll just have to mentally, know what we're talking about here. So Frodo and Sam continue following Gollum. They're journeying along, and as they are journeying along, we have these interactions between Sam and Gollum, and just show their relationship and how Sam just dislikes Gollum, distrusts him. Gollum does not like Sam. They go back and forth. Stinker and fat hobbits, and but we see Frodo sort of we get him giving us this little bit of pity, a little bit of understanding of what Gollum is, and we have these moments where they talk and discuss, and sort of Frodo comes to understanding. He tries to recognize Gollum as Smeagol, as that he used to be a hobbit like person or creature at one point, and he sort of tries to he empathizes with him. Frodo recognizes that he's been turned by the ring, and Frodo, having carried the ring up to this point, is starting to understand what kind of toll it takes on a person, and tries to empathize with them. And Smeagol, at a certain point, literally tries to cast off Gollum. This dual personality, Gollum being like the more evil and craven one of them, and Smeagol being his more good.
I will say
persona.
The specific scene of the first major scene, and it's the scene where he tries to cast Gollum off, of Smeagol talking to Gollum. That's one of the scenes that like I offhand would see as a kid, and I remember watching the scene and just being so interested in what was going on. Like a lot of the war and the orcs and stuff as a kid, like it was just like not something that really grabbed me, but Smeagol was just so interesting to me. And still now, like those scenes, it's my favorite part of the movie is that Smeagol scene. And I have the belief that Andy Serkis, who motion captured and voiced Smeagol, quite frankly deserved some sort of award for portraying Smeagol, especially in this movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not something you ever really think about. Smeagol's an important character, but he's not like the character that you really, you really connect with or you look at. And he seems like, but I agree. No, like Smeagol is he's a unique character is the thing. Yeah,
like
the performance is so compelling, really, that it really does evoke this from us, a pity, a revulsion, so many kind of different feelings that you move through as you see Smeagol, and especially how he kind of goes through this strange journey psychologically, or what we're observing through him, and how we see him react to these things.
But yeah, we get Smeagol basically trusting Frodo and wanting to do right by him.
Yeah. And so we get them continuing to journey on in multiple moments throughout it.
Led through the Dead March.
Yes, the Dead Marshes, the scene of a battle, long ago. The battle with Sauron that is seen in the first movie in a flashback. And there's a couple interactions there, where Frodo is sort of lured into the water, where ghastly spirits are, and he's pulled out and saved by Gollum.
By Smeagol,
where Nazgul flying on these like draconic, creatures, looking for them that they avoid. And we have them continuing to journey on. Eventually, they make it to the Black Gate, where they can see there's just this massive, like literally mountainous gate, and an army marching inside. And Frodo and Sam prepare themselves as if they're gonna go. They're gonna try to sneak into the gate, believing this is the way into Mordor. This is the only way. And Gollum essentially stops them, and he tells them like this: you won't be, you'll get captured. You can't go inside. You can't make it. And he tells them, but there is another way. And there's a small moment where Sam like slips and falls down the way, and they have to hide from some of the army men using their
the elven cloak.
Yeah, their elven cloaks. I said army men, but these are actually the Easterlings or the Haradrim. So basically, people from the east that Mordor or Sauron has subjugated, men that he has subjugated. But yeah, they use the elven cloaks to blend in with the hillside and avoid their detection. And Gollum, basically leads them on a new path and is taking them towards basically, to some secret way into Mordor. While they are traveling, they are moving through the countryside. And again, this is actually, I believe, timeline wise, when Gollum has this, fully kind of changing over, getting rid of Gollum and becoming more Smeagol.
Yeah.
We have them traveling along, and they see more of these Easterlings and these Haradrims traveling along. And while they are watching them, they see them attacked by, ambushed by warriors that are in hiding and, firing arrows from cover. And while they are watching, they, try to, sneak away and not get noticed. But these warriors, these rangers of Gondor, capture them. And they capture Frodo and Sam, take them away to a secret cave, tunnel, waterfall. Gollum has made it out. They do not see where he goes. And we find that they're captured by Faramir, who is Boromir's brother and, the second, captain of the guard.
And now the sole heir to the stewards of Gondor.
Yeah. And they basically find out that Boromir is dead. They did not know Boromir's fate.
Oh, he did, because they saw the boat, it went down river and they found it. He knew of his brother's fate, but he did not know why it happened.
No. So Frodo and Sam find out about Boromir's fate.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Frodo and Sam did not know Boromir died because they left. They just didn't know what happened.
I forgot.
Faramir tells them that he died, and he did not know how he died, but he does know that he is dead. And Frodo and Sam know that it's likely that he was killed, protecting them. Interesting thing in the books is that I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, people that actually read the books, I believe that Faramir actually sees a ghost, like a spirit of his brother, like along the river. And like, that's how he knows that his brother's dead.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, it's something like either he sees the actual, like he somehow sees the actual boat passing by, and like the spirit of his brother comes to him, or like he sees something like that. He sees like a ghostly kind of like visage, and that's how he knows. But he doesn't have it confirmed until then. Another thing in the book is that Faramir here actually receives them warmly and like helps them, and it's not like a bad interaction. But so here in this moment, Faramir is like, you know what? Hey, you guys are coming with me. I'm taking you back to Gondor. And, he doesn't really know what their purpose was. And even though they were traveling with him, he still is like uncertain of them.
He saw that Smeagol was with them and asked them, why were you traveling with that thing? And Sam says, oh, we weren't.
Yeah. So then Smeagol is caught down in a pool below this cave and waterfall. And he enters in swimming in it, and Faramir says, "Oh, I don't know what does he say? Because I guess it's a law or something.
It's like a sacred place.
Yeah, this is a sacred place, yeah. And like the penalty is death. And he basically says, "I'm going to kill him. If you guys don't know him, I'm just going to kill him." Then, and Frodo tells him to stop. He goes down, tries to tell Smeagol, "Hey, it's okay, come with me." And then these guys capture him, take him away. And in this moment, Gollum, Smeagol feels betrayed. He feels master betrayed us, and
despite the fact that Frodo saved his life.
Yeah,
but he doesn't know. He doesn't understand.
Yeah, understandably, his perception is that he betrayed him to be captured by these men. And so Faramir kind of comes in to interrogate him, and he hears Gollum talking to himself, and eventually it comes out, Faramir understands the thing that Gollum is there for and what Frodo has.
The precious,
something valuable, something powerful. And, with the history in mind that Boromir went to go retrieve some powerful thing from this meeting and then was traveling with this hobbit, I guess Faramir puts it all together that Frodo must have the ring, and finds that he has the ring and says, all right, well, you're coming with me now for sure. We're going to Gondor. I'm taking you to Gondor.
And throughout this, we are seeing flashbacks, and we're getting insights into Faramir's character and how he was the seen as the lesser son to his father. Boromir was the golden child, and Faramir couldn't compare.
Yeah. Even too, his brother, did not feel the same way. He definitely did not agree with his father, making his brother feel second. But we see how Faramir was put into a secondary position and not, or at least what we see here is just, him not being as valued, and how he's put in this position where he would want to succeed in his brother's place. And so he has this opportunity, and he takes them with him, but they have to go to Osgiliath. They have to go defend the city from attack. It's, a city that's important. It's on the river. It's literally the last defense essentially between, I can't remember the name, Minas Tirith. Yeah, Minas Tirith, from Mordor. And they take the hobbits there, and they're defending the city. And in the course of defending the city, multiple things are happening. People are fighting, dying. The hobbits kind of escape. They're running away. And at one point, Frodo is almost compelled to hand over the ring to the Nazgul. And just at the last moment, of course, Samwise Gamgee saves him, as he will continue to do throughout these movies.
Hero of Middle-earth.
Yeah, actual hero of Middle-earth. Saves Frodo, stops him from giving up the ring. And in this moment, Faramir, he pleads with Faramir and tells him, we have to go, we have to destroy it. And Faramir allows them to leave. And they escape, even though the other men saw Faramir do this. And he says, if you're doing this, this is basically like treason. We'll have to tell them. We'll have to tell the king that you let them go. And he lets them go. And so Sam, Frodo, and Gollum continue on their way. And Gollum, we have moments where you see that now he is, he feels betrayed, and he feels like now he is going to
try and kill
the hobbits.
Yeah, he wants to turn them against each other. We see the roots of that, and he's going to lead them to a nasty trap.
Yes.
Which we will see.
Yeah, and that is the end of Frodo, Sam, and Gollum's journey in the Two Towers. And so the other, I would say that some of these other ones are essentially intertwined. So I might just speak them.
I was just basically going to put that the one story is the Hobbits, second story is the other Hobbits, and then the rest of it is so intertwined, and it's the bulk of the story. So we'll save that for last.
Yeah.
So Merry and Pippin, they're a little easier to go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Merry and Pippin have been captured. They're traveling with the orcs, and the orcs are running them through Rohan for days and days and days, until they come to a point where the orcs are resting at night. And while at night, the orcs essentially begin to get into, a scuffle amongst themselves over, not having enough to eat, and just, and the thing is that these orcs are from two different bands. And we see that there's kind of some difference between them. Like some of them look a little bulkier and the other ones look a little stringier, and they make it out like there's a difference between them. And they get into a fight, and they start to fight over with each other and kill one of them, and they start to eat that one, and just, some cannibalistic, ridiculous orc stuff. And in the night, these orcs are attacked by a cavalry of Rohirrim, riders on horseback, the army of Roham. And they basically in the night are slaughtered, but Merry and Pippin very, very luckily and with some skill are able to sneak away during the battle and make it into Fangorn Forest, an ancient, magical, forest. And while in Fangorn Forest, Merry and Pippin, they escape from one orc, and through this escape from that orc, they encounter an Ent, and a sentient tree herder person thing, magic tree, and as they travel along with this Ent, the Ent is unsure. Apparently it's so old it doesn't necessarily recognize whether they're a halfling or an orc or what the difference is. So he takes them to the White Wizard, and the White Wizard, as would be revealed in the time, in the story that we watch with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, is not Saruman. It is Gandalf, who has risen again or come back to life. And Gandalf basically tells Treebeard to continue with Merry and Pippin and take them to an Ent council and go with them.
Yeah.
Treebeard continues along, and there's a couple of interactions where we get to see them, having some funnies because of course Merry and Pippin are our comic relief.
Yeah, they're just a delight to watch together, and we get the sense that Merry, more so than Pippin, is getting the sense of the gravity of the situation, especially as they approach the council, where he's the slowness of the trees and like we haven't gotten to the council quite yet, but we get the sense that he was recognizes the urgency, whereas Pip is a little more like having fun with it, like he's happy to be away from the orcs and he's just having fun in the forest.
Yeah. And so they travel on for a little bit, and eventually they arrive, and Treebeard is called an Entmoot, basically a meeting of Ents. And apparently Entmoots take a long time. So like for like an entire day, they are just talking over one simple subject, which is that they agree that they're not orcs.
Yeah.
And I guess this goes on for, who knows how long, a very prolonged amount of time. But by the end, they decide that they're not going to do anything about what's going on.
And this causes Merry to be quite upset. He is like, he even has this moment where he tries to get an appeal to the Ents, but his words, they've already made their decision. And so at this point, his words fall on deaf ears. And Pippin sees this happens, and they have this interaction where Merry basically sort of helps Pippin to understand like the gravity of the situation. And it's at this point that
there won't be a Shire Pip.
Yeah.
And so Treebeard is going to take them back home. He's going to walk them back home through the forests. And Pippin, it is Pippin. He clever Pippin says, "Hey, don't take this way. Go around this way." He tells him to basically head towards Isengard. Saruman's, where Saruman's tower is, and the surrounding, area of it. They continue traveling on, and when they arrive on the borders of Isengard, they see that everything around Isengard's been just torn apart. All the trees there have been
sections of the forest have been leveled.
Yeah, completely leveled. So to fuel the war machine that is Saruman's army. And when they arrived, Saruman's army has mostly the bulk of their forces are gone from.
And they're at the Battle of Helm's Deep, which we will get to.
Mm-hmm. And so Treebeard is distraught after seeing all this forest land destroyed, and it by someone he trusted, Saruman, a wizard. He should have known better. And Treebeard screams, and he calls in all the Ents, and the Ents go to war, and they attack Isengard and basically wreck it. I mean, there's just no orcs there to defend it, and they break a dam.
They take control of Isengard while Saruman is there.
Yeah, they break a dam that was holding up one of the rivers, and they flood all of Isengard as well. And it is essentially, they take over Isengard and wash out some of the filth that was there.
And Merry and Pippin, for their rewards in convincing the Ents to join the fray, are rewarded with a stockpile of food and weed.
Hell yeah. Yeah. And so that's essentially Merry Pippin's journey with Treebeard to conquer Isengard, which they successfully do.
Yeah. I'll say that it's honestly a small part of the movie what they make up, but it's its own independent thing, and it has its own weight of importance. And this is another part of the movie that I just thought was like pretty delightful, like the whole way through. I just like the hobbits, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally understand. I mean, they're likable, and it's something about the hobbits. I mean, I think it's a thing about hobbits is like their innocence and their way of like seeing things and their the lightness. That's I mean one of the reasons that Gandalf, he likes hobbits is that they're a little less serious, they're a little more simple, and they appreciate just the small things, and they're just like good-hearted creatures on the planet, and we see that brought to, the Frodo's fortitude and Sam's like bravery, and Mary's bravery as well.
Mary's heart, and then Pippin's
I
quick wits, honestly, like
Yeah.
when it comes to it.
Yeah, I mean, and just our jovialness,
Yeah.
the lightness that they bring, even to these wars. Though we do see that change over time. It certainly does. Like all of these events wear on these hobbits, and you see them. They go from being all sort of, again innocent, but by the end, they all take their own scars and their own, they don't come away from it unharmed.
We see the real that comes really into play in the next movie. Like by the end of this movie, look, Merry and Pippin, they're eating food and smoking weed, and Frodo and Sam haven't stepped foot into Mordor yet.
Mm-hmm.
So there's worse to come for them, and it's kind of nice to see. As much as I said the Fellowship doesn't end on the happiest of notes, I'd say that this movie ends on a slightly happier note. Particularly for Merry and Pippin, and Sam and Frodo to a certain extent, they're on their way. There's a bit of sinisterness about Smeagol with the trap he has for them, but we feel confident that they're still on the right path.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that them being able to continue on, Sam and Frodo, is good, but there is definitely a lot more sinister. Like it is a leading into the next movie. Like we're hoping to see. Like there's a like Merry and Pippin conquer Isengard, and that's essentially a good ending right there.
Yeah.
And as we're gonna get to, Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli, valiantly defend Rohan by the end of the movie, and turn the tide of this.
I mean, speaking of which.
Yeah,
Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli begin the movie looking for the hobbits.
Yes. So they are hot on the trail of the orcs and Uruk-hai that captured Merry and Pippin, and they're following them for literal days, like running, sprinting for days. We get some interesting, kind of funny little interactions from Gimli, and then, but we see them like intensely tracking them.
I, as a person who is aware of internet culture, I learned the significance of the phrase "they're taking the hobbits to Isengard."
Yeah, which I mean, I don't know who's been around the internet long enough to know that song.
I mean,
I do.
I think a lot of people know that song.
Yeah. I mean, that is an early internet song for sure. So, but yeah, they're taking the hobbits to Isengard, and they are following them intensely for days and days as they pass into Rohan. While journeying in Rohan, they see a cavalry of Rohirrim riding along, and they hail them down. And at first, they come to them, with aggression, and are not very trusting of them. But after a moment, they sort of win them over, and even though Gimli wasn't really helping it very much, they win them over and convince them, hey, like we're here, we're not spies, we're not here for bad purposes, we're just tracking our friends and trying to rescue them. And the Rohirrim report to them that they killed everybody. That all the group of orcs that they are following, they found them, and in the night they slew them all, and none escaped them. And at this point, Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn believe that they may have killed the hobbits. They follow and find the site of the battle.
There's the interaction there where because the leader of this group is Éomer, correct?
Yes.
Who at this point does he indicate that
he does? Yeah. So maybe I was getting a little ahead of us.
He indicates that it's his uncle Theoden.
Yes. So his uncle Theoden, the king of Rohan, has banished him, and that he is like there is something wrong essentially with the king, and he is not in good counsel any longer. And I think essentially I'm actually skipping a part where we see this happen. If I'm correct,
there's like I think there is a flashback that you get to see of Éomer being told to leave.
I don't know if it's a flashback. I think it's kind of supposed to be in line with what
is going on. Yeah.
So I did actually skip over that part where we do get the scene that actually shows really the Rohirrim coming back from an encounter with orcs in Rohan, where they are bringing back the king's son, Theodred, who is injured badly. And he reports this to the king. He says, hey, we were attacked. We were ambushed by orcs.
And the king is this like gaunt white figure. Like he just looks like this old, withered old man that barely can think for himself.
Yeah. And he goes to report this to the king. He says, we were attacked. We were ambushed by orcs. And they were bearing a white hand of Saruman. Like, this is his symbol. And
this is significant because Saruman is meant to be the ally.
Yeah, Saruman, to all people, Saruman is an advisor, a wizard that, he is an ally to many people. So, I mean, up to this point, Gandalf believed he was an ally as well. He had to report it to Elrond and all the people at that council that he betrayed them and that, that he was now allied with their enemy. And in this moment, the king's council, Grima Wormtongue, comes out and accuses Éomer of lying. He says that you are lying. That's not true. Saruman has always been our friend and ally, and and why would you bring this? You're troubling the king. They even trying to tell him like your son is dying. You need to see him before he passes, or come and offer him some strength. And basically, Grim Wormtongue, he's like, you're laying these troubles on your king. How dare you? And he watches as Éomer's sister, leaves, and this is lingering, just a total creep, playing out this creep role as he watches him, and Éomer threatens Grima.
But it's clear that Grima has a control over Theoden, that he's basically playing like a Jafar figure, where he's kind of has his control over the king, but even more so than the Jafar. Like, he basically tells the king what to do, and he is working for Saruman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's basically acting as a voice of the king, but really just doing whatever he's saying, whatever he wants. And Éomer threatens him, and Grima has him cast out, and he says, on the authority of the king, you Éomer are banished. You nephew of the king are banished from Rohan, and that is why we see later the interaction I was speaking of, where Éomer and his entire like Rohirrim, his like I can't remember how many. It's supposed to be like like 1,000 or like some very large amount of men.
At this point in the movie, we see a small band of them, but we see later on that there's a lot of them. Yeah,
so there is more. I think behind the scenes kind of thing. Gandalf is not just getting Éomer, but he's getting multiple other Rohirrim from around Rohan and like assembling them all to bring them to aid and at the battle.
But they're just doing the good deeds of killing orcs.
Yeah, they're leaving basically. They've been banished and they're on their way out, but they're still here and they're their land and like killing orcs as they find them. So in that interaction, Éomer sort of reports that the king is there's something wrong with him, and that he has banished him from this land, and to take great caution, but they allow Aragorn and them to move forward.
And for the time being, their mission is still to find the hobbits. So they make their way to where the orcs were cast down, and they're able to follow some tracks into Fangorn Forest.
Yeah, they see at first they do think that the hobbits are dead, but they Aragorn uses his sort of keen.
Oh, the scene where he kicks the helmet.
Yeah,
that's another great scene.
In frustration, yes, Aragorn kicks the head of an orc and yells out loudly, which of course everybody would want to tell you that background if you didn't already know this. When Viggo Mortensen, the actor for Aragorn, kicks that helmet, he breaks his toe, and the scream he lets out is a real scream, and that's why they kept him in the movie. He actually broke his foot right there. So
yeah.
So I was thinking it's a fantastic moment.
It really is, yeah.
Like, he's truly screaming in pain. Like, But using his ranger sort of detection or in investigation powers, he's able to deduce that the hobbits actually did escape. Like they rolled away, they did not die, and they made it into Fangorn Forest, where they go in and they follow them. And we definitely see. I mean, the hobbits didn't know where they were going, but Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn have a sense of like this forest is ancient and maybe not evil, but just it's
Power.
ancientness makes
There's
it
power.
Yeah, there's a power there, and it's something that they sort of fear. They go in there cautiously and they follow along. I think they also understand that Fangorn Forest borders nearby where Isengard is, and so like they're in the realm of an enemy of theirs. And so as they are going there and pursuing, they detect at a moment when they're traveling that something has found them, and they identify it as a white wizard. A white wizard has found them. As they prepare to turn, and
Legolas fires an arrow.
Yeah, they do. I mean, he fires an arrow. Gimli throws an axe, and Aragorn brings up his sword to battle him. And all of them are cast aside, and Aragorn's sword is heated, and he has to drop it. But what is revealed is Gandalf, who has come back to life, and they are all in disbelief. And even Gandalf, almost in some interesting way, doesn't quite fully, he indicates that he doesn't fully remember everything from his previous life. He says, "Oh, yes, Gandalf, that was my name, Gandalf the Grey." But he does, know and recognize his previous allies. And
I'm Gandalf the White.
Yes, and he reports to them that he encountered Merry and Pippin and sent them along with Treebeard. But now they need to turn and go to Rohan. They need to go to Edoras. Yeah, I think Edoras is like the capital city, and they make way. I
gotta say, this is a moment where there's a lot of moments in these movies where I wish I didn't know what happened. I wish that I didn't know that Gandalf came back.
Yeah. Again, as a kid, not having actually read the books, that was an awesome moment. Like seriously watching and being like, "Oh my God, wow, Gandalf's alive." Again, it's that big reveal. Like that's, it hits a whole different, way. This whole movie like has a whole like sense to it when you don't know what's going on for the first time. And as that's definitely one of them. But still,
Gandalf leads them to Edoras.
Mm-hmm. They head to Edoras.
Which, quick side note, as I watched them in this little city, and I watched them enter the keep of this little city, as someone who had not seen this movie before, had not seen this place before, I felt that this place looked very familiar. And I'm wondering if you can think of another place that may look similar to Edoras. Because as someone who extensively played Skyrim, I was not immediately, but I was definitely tipped off that this place looked a lot like Whiterun.
Yep. No, I'd agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks almost... It is like kind of like a...
There are differences.
Yeah.
But it is pretty much just Whiterun.
Yeah. It's definitely like a city of like thatched roof houses and a palisade wall built on a like, heightened, hillock.
And like the way like the path travels to where the keep is and the keep's face, like the only thing that's missing is like the Fighters Guild and like the stuff surrounding it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, they all arrive at fucking,
Whiterun.
I guess. Well, I was going to say like, I almost said rip off in the opposite direction, but yeah.
Whiterun's the rip off. Yeah. That's what I wasn't trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
But if you're going to rip something off.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, basically everything in fantasy has been a ripoff since Lord of the Rings. So there's too many old fantasy tropes that come from something that already happened that, it's hard to get away from it now.
But it's like okay. When you just rip off the layout, like
everything. hey, here's the thing. History repeats itself. All we do as humans is just basically rip off old things and make them kind of new. And that's okay.
Honestly, I feel like as a Lord of the Ring fan, like if you recognize that when you're playing through Whiterun, like that's kind of cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like is that a connection you ever made before?
It makes total sense, and I'm not even surprised by it. Like maybe in some way I noticed it or felt it, but I've never thought of that.
And you know what? I think it's because like I'm familiar with Whiterun, and so I was experiencing this place for the first time in the film, but it felt so familiar. Like I felt like I had been there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's just like a way that, like whenever, maybe it's because every time I played Skyrim, Whiterun just became like a location that I would be like going and spamming and like storing all my loot and like selling all my things.
But it's a place that you spend a lot of time.
Yeah. But how often do you approach it? How often do you look at it from outside?
But honestly, it was the insides of the place that felt it more to me.
Yeah, you're right though. I mean, I think it is like a complete. My thought though is like, are they just? Did they rip that off there, or is it just is that just a common way to build your cities?
See, maybe it's that. Maybe it's even like a subconscious thing. But at a certain point, like yeah.
What
Anyways, back into
a nerd.
Anyways,
yeah. So they arrive in Edoras. They go before the king. And the guards, like there are many guards stationed around, and they say, hey, we need to take your weapons. And Gandalf says, oh, well, you wouldn't part an old man from his walking stick, would you? And they're like, persuasion check success. Yeah, sure, you can keep your stick. And they go inside to speak to the king. And Gandalf always is kind of like, hey, just be ready or whatever. He goes in there and begins to address the king. And Green Wormtongue is like, oh, you have no place here, Gandalf, the Gray, blah blah, and Gandalf is like, hold your tongue, and speaks directly to the king, and essentially goes into it like where he kind of starts to try and like rouse him and compel him a little bit, and realizes that there's something wrong here, and identifies like they're literally a spell on this king, and he basically casts off his cloak and goes into like trying to break whatever spell is there, and we see Saruman's direct influence. Like Saruman speaks through the king, believing that. Yeah, actually no, he doesn't cast off the cloak until he's already begun speaking. And we see Saruman speaking directly through the king and saying, you have no power here, Gandalf the Grey. And Gandalf casts off his cloak and, reveals that he is a more powerful version of himself now. And, he basically begins to, compel and take, the spirit out of Saruman. We see that, like, Saruman even says, like, I'm going to take this king with me. Like, he's going to kill the king if and Gandalf prevents it. And he casts out Saruman's influence from Theoden's body. And we see Theoden immediately, literally, like all this
color returns to him.
Yeah, his hair, like his withered hair, like literally, like returns to golden, and we see him like de-age in a matter of moments, and all the vitality come back to him. And Eowyn, his niece, comes and she is like, everybody's like, oh my god, look, the king has returned to his like former self.
Unfortunately, before this could happen, the king's son
had expired
already.
And he did not see him. And we also had an interaction between Eowyn and Wormtongue where he came in there and just was being, again, ultra creepy. Yeah, just totally fucking weird creeper. But here in this moment, Theoden, he looks around like after waking up from this daze, this like whatever dream he was in, and he asks, he's like, where is my son? And that's where we have I believe, like, just following this, basically we have his son's funeral. Then actually no, before that is, sorry, I'm getting a little out of place. First, he casts Grima out. First, he's like, you like wretched soul, like how dare you control me, you did all these things, like you made me do like all these things I didn't want to, you are he basically was like ready to kill him. And Aragorn in mercy says there, hey, there's been enough blood shed, let this man go. And Grima Wormtongue, like a total puss, is just like, get out of my way, like freaking out as he screams, like and he escapes and runs away from Edoras. Then Theoden asks, like, where's my son? And at this time, now we see the funeral of his son and an interaction between Theoden and is it Gandalf or Aragorn?
I presume Aragorn, but
yeah, one of them basically, where like we just see Theoden really broken down by this, where he's like a man should not have to bury his own son, his own child. We get this this touching scene here, and then we move on, and now we have sort of a moment where they are all in council with Theoden, who's he's returned to his vitality, returned to his senses, and now is being made aware of what's been going on. And I think up to this point, we've also now seen some scenes of orcs, attacking, like villages in Rohan.
Yeah.
We've also seen some scenes of Saruman like rousing these men. There, these men in the mountains, essentially, that and that have, we can. I can't really remember much from the books, if there's more about it, but basically, he's rousing them, saying like they took your lands, forced you into the mountains, and he's rousing these men into anger, so that they will, I guess, also go into attack on Rohan.
Yeah. And so like the outskirts of Rohan around the capital are being sieged, and the people are fleeing, trying to make their way to
safety wherever it is, Edoras or whatever it may be. We see like we had a scene where there was a boy and his sister put onto a horse at one of the villages and sent off by their mother. And we have this boy arriving just barely at Edoras, and them bringing them in and having this report of what's going on out there from the boy. We have Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, Gandalf, Theoden, and his captains gambling are all there, and he's saying like hey, we have to do something about this. We have to fight them. And they're compelling him to like go on the offensive, like go out there and kill these orcs, take them out of your lands. And Theoden, he makes a decision. He says, no, we're gonna, we need to go and be in a place where we can defend ourselves. So we need to all make our way to Helm's Deep, a castle, a fortification in the mountains. That is, a good fortification. It's surrounded by massive mountains all around, and has a large thick wall and a thick castle structure all built up, and that is what he decides. He says, we're taking all of our people, we're going to Helm's Deep, where we can defend ourselves effectively, even against the council of Aragorn and Gandalf, who think that he should go on an offensive, and that if they go there, they will have nowhere to go. Like they cannot run or retreat from Helm's Deep
because it's backed into a cliff.
Yeah. And so they have everybody make way and get ready to go. We're seeing also Saruman and his armies are now being let loose and being set forth, a massive army of orcs. And we see Saruman in council with Green Wormtongue, who's also telling him they will go to Helm's Deep. Like it is, that is what he will do. And, then they'll be captured there. Essentially, they'll be stuck. Saruman going to Helm's Deep is actually playing into Saruman's plan here, because he has this insider information. On their way, he sends, warg riders, orcs riding these beastly wolf-like creatures to go and basically like harry the vulnerable people as they're on this caravan to make it to Helm's Deep. And during this caravan, all the men marshal themselves to go to defend against the wargs, and they fight. And the wargs, are really, they're tearing up the men, but in the end, they do turn the wargs back and defeat them all. But during this encounter, Aragorn finds himself literally like attached to one of these warg riders as they are running, and literally the warg, the rider falls off as he stabs him, but he is still attached to this warg, and the warg does not stop, and it literally runs off a cliff and takes Aragorn with him as they fall into the river deep below.
At this time, let's talk about Aragorn's little subplot, and technically an additional subplot that's running through, but it's a lot smaller of a subplot. Let's talk about what's happening back in Rivendell.
Yeah. So during this time, all these events are happening. We're getting scenes of this interaction between Elrond and Arwen, which is that, he's compelling her to leave. Like, hey, you need to go take this trip to the Grey Havens.
Aragorn's not coming back for you.
Yeah, he's not coming back. He's probably going to die doing this. And even if he did, even if he did become king, he's going to there's nothing here for you. He'll just die. Like he even kind of reveals to her a vision of her seeing him die before him. That even though he is the thing that the movies do not make very clear, other than in an extended edition scene, which you may recall from this, where it is mentioned that Aragorn rode with Theoden and his father in battles many years before, like 50 years before. Aragorn, rode with his father and him when Theoden was much younger. And, Eowyn does question this and is like, well, how is that possible? Aragorn is of Númenorian blood. He is a longer lived human. Like they can live to be 200 to 300 years old.
And it's revealed that he is 87.
Yes. So he is much, he's much older than anybody would know. But even with that, I mean, elves don't ever die. So
yeah,
in, Arwen will see Aragorn die, even if it's in, longer time. To them, another 100 years is really nothing. And Elrond tells her that there's nothing here for her, or she's just going to be here to watch him die and then have nothing, and not be here with her family.
So he implores her to leave with the rest of the elves.
And during this time, she does begin to make the journey as if she is going to leave.
And she has a vision.
Yes, but then she has a vision. And in this vision, she sees that there is something that would be left for her here, that her and Aragorn would have a son. And upon that, she goes back and, calls her father out and is like, hey, what's up, fool? Like, you didn't tell me I was going to have a kid, And Elrond, has a gift of foresight, but he can't see all things, and he is uncertain of the future. And he says, even if you were to have a child, that means that we would have to succeed here, and that the shadow would, have to, be defeated. And even if the shadow is defeated, its fate is also tied to the fate of Rivendell and all the elfin lands. Again, another thing that we have from the books that's not really made clear necessarily in the movies is that what the elves get from their rings of power is the ability to protect that which is important to them, which is all their lands, their kingdoms, like all of their people, the elves, and like basically all of Rivendell and Lothlorien stay perfect and don't decay or fade away because of the power of the elven rings. And all the rings are inherently tied to the one ring, and when the one ring is destroyed, the power of all those elven rings is also destroyed. And when that happens, that means that Lothlorien and Rivendell will fade away. They will begin to decay as they haven't before. And so anyone that remains there will be remaining in a place that is decaying around them, where elves do not. They do not fade away. And so he's like, either if we do defeat the shadow, then you'll be living in a world that will be, that will be fading away behind you. You'll be living in a world of men, and all your family will have gone. And he still doesn't want her to stay, but she's like, nah, man, like, I'm gonna stay. There is a future here for me. Like, my child is a future for me. And so, and there's this like unknown kind of thing where it's getting across this point, like, that she's also fading, that, that she's connected to the Even Star. And that's like, and because she's there, like, that is like her connection to Aragorn. Like, she grants some kind of healing or like protection to him in the moments when he fell from there and may have died. Instead, he does not. Instead, he makes all of his death saving throws and wakes up in 1d4 hours. And is alive. He, when the rest of the company sees that, he is gone, he's not there. This orc literally tells him, like, oh, he would took a dive off the cliff, and they confirm that, like, Aragorn's gone, and they assume that he is dead.
I will say that there's one member of the band who seems particularly distraught over this news. I mean, they're all upset, but one person, and another side to Aragorn's little story, a development in this movie, is his newly found friend Eowyn, who it's pretty clear takes an immediate infatuation with Aragorn.
Definitely wants the D.
Yeah, I mean,
talking about the Dunedain,
Yeah, like, obviously.
Eowyn, she is very distraught by the news that he is faded. She has clearly been showing signs that she, have her interest in Aragorn. Gimli and Legolas, when they come back, to all the people that did make it to Helm's Deep, while they defended them, he reports that he fell, and everyone is disheartened to hear this, but as they all prepare, to defend themselves from, the orcs that are coming, Aragorn recovers, and his horse, like, basically has been has magically guided to him.
It was a horse that he set free because it was Theoden's son's horse.
Oh,
and he wouldn't respond to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And Aragorn basically was able to soothe the horse, but decided that the horse needed to be set free.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they couldn't, like, no one should ride him.
Yeah.
But in Aragorn's time of need, the horse came to him.
Oh, wow. Did you read that somewhere?
No, I watched it.
You watched it?
Yeah, maybe it's shown in the extended edition, but that I'm pretty sure that's what I saw happen.
Oh man, that's actually a way cooler thing.
Let me read, but you can keep covering it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like that is actually a detail I have never even noticed before, and that's actually makes it way cooler. It's not just rando horse. Like, I mean, I thought it was like his horse, that he'd been riding up to that point, that like came to him, like found him, or whether it was guided by Arwen's magic or something. That would also be interesting, though. I didn't know that was the case.
Maybe I could be wrong, but
it would be kind of cool if that was the case. Though it might make less sense because his horse was there. I don't know. You can find that out. But
yeah,
a horse does come, and basically Aragorn like literally rolls in on like on barely alive, makes it back to Helm's Deep, and everybody's overjoyed to find that he's still alive. But he's like, hey, no time to delay. I know, glad that I'm alive too, but we need to get ready for this battle.
Brago was a bay horse with a white star on his forehead. He was the steed of King Theoden's son Theodred.
Oh wow, nice.
Who was wounded in battle. After the rider's death, Brago became wild and refused to accept any new rider until Aragorn met him in the stables. Aragorn calmed the horse, speaking to him in Sindarin, then told the stable hands to return him free. This fellow has seen enough of war.
And then he came and rescued him. That's what that was. Brago was that horse.
Okay. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. Did you know? Hey, another totally sideways thing or separate thing is that Aragorn loved the horses he rode in that, which there are two. Or no, sorry, it wasn't both of them. He had one horse that he rode basically in the movie, and I think there was another one, the one that like Arwen rode or something. But he liked riding after the movie. He liked riding horses so much that he bought those two horses.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's adorable.
And he killed them and ate them.
Yeah.
Because he loved them so much. He wanted to make them a part of his body.
That's what you do with the people you love.
Yeah, JK. Well, he didn't kill him. But so Aragorn makes it back, and he's like, "Hey, no time to celebrate." He's on the way. He saw the force of orcs that was coming, and it was not, it was a greater force than they'd ever imagined. Like thousands of orcs, not hundreds. Not something that he was like, we need to be ready. Like we're like this is not. He's without giving up all hope. He was like, we're probably gonna die. Like this is more orcs than we could ever possibly hope to stop.
And they're gearing up. They're preparing for the Battle of Helm's Deep, which, as a person who has not watched the movies, I've heard reference. Like, there's another battle. There is other notable battles in Lord of the Rings. There's another big war battle with a siege on a city in the next movie. But Helm's Deep, I think, is sort of the pinnacle.
I believe so. Yeah, Helm's Deep is like kind of like the biggest, best battle of all Lord of the Rings. IMO, even including The Hobbit, which most people would actually be like, yeah, fuck The Hobbit. Like, but yeah, there's just something about here's the thing: is actually in these moments when you're seeing them prepare, right? And if you look at if we compare like Minas Tirith and maybe like Battle of the Five Armies or something, if you want to use those comparisons, without getting too much into those battles, the thing is Minas Tirith is like this massive like walled city with like well-trained troops, and like they like knew this all was coming, right? Battle of the Five Armies is like, it is like assemblage of these human armies, but then it's like a full army of like elven like warriors that are all kitted out. And it's, a full army of dwarves that are kitted out, and the orcs that come in, and that one's like kind of like a big ramshackle and everything. Helm's Deep is a few good like Rohan warriors and just a bunch of farmhands on like boys and kids. And you're literally seeing like, it's like the tone that it sets for this battle. And I don't know if you felt this as well.
It looks like they don't have a chance.
Yeah, they don't have a chance, and this is our last chance. They just have to do what they have to do. They're handing literally spears and helmets to like young boys, like like 13-year-olds and old men. And
this is the stuff that we're seeing in between Merry and Pippin basically being led through the forest as slowly as possible through the slowest council ever. And we see it's like Merry has some intuition and he knows that people need help, but we as the audience know that they are in desperate need for the help of something. Yeah. And so we're just getting caught between this, and it increases the urgency of that other scene, making what's happening over there even more interesting.
Yeah. And yeah, it's intense. What it's setting up here is something that makes it so much more profound. Like the battle that's going to come ahead is it almost, I mean, again, Minas Tirith is like a big deal. Obviously there's people that are like, going to die there. There's families and people like that are, need to be protected, but it's just a little, I don't know. It's a little less daunting. It's a little less foreboding. They don't, it's not quite set up so much as this.
In that one, I think you have an understanding of what could happen. You sort of get the feeling of like we'll get to Minas Tirith in the next movie, but there's a certain army that is going to come and show up at a certain point. It's just a waiting game of when that army is going to show up. So that battle is a lot more about what happens with the people that happen to be on the ground fighting. It's like that. I think that's my standout. That's what I think of when I think of Minas Tirith is, again, not to get too spoilery, but it's Éowyn, what's happening with her.
If you're having anything spoiled for you, why are you listening to this podcast? Go watch the movies.
Fair. But yeah, but this battle, I picture the battle. I picture the army. I picture Helm's Deep. I picture the freaking the ladder things being hoisted up for them to get up. I remember like playing this in like a video game, like the battles at Helm's Deep in the video game. I remember that being a fun part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If anybody remembers playing the PlayStation 2 Two Towers, Lord of the Rings video game, which I really liked, and I know Ryan played it and everything. But when you're playing this level, it's basically like a nonstop. You're just going back and forth, trying to knock. You're on the wall of Helm's Deep, just literally trying to kill orcs over and over again and knock the ladders down and prevent yourself from being overwhelmed. But like just literally too many orcs to even be able to fight
for like a certain time frame, basically.
Yeah, which is essentially the movie. I mean, when you get to the point of
they're just trying to survive.
Yeah, they're literally just trying to stop a stem of unending orcs that are just coming over continuously, and yeah, it's insane. But we see them preparing for the battle. We even have an interaction between Legolas and Aragorn, where Legolas basically makes it out. He's like, it's old men and farm boys and a few actual warriors here. Like there's basically no hope. Like these men they're all gonna die. And his point is like it's on Legolas's point. I don't know exactly if it's like, what are we even doing here? Like, what is the point? Like they chose this fate and we shouldn't be here. And Aragorn's like, then I will die with them. Like he's like, I will fight this battle because it is worth fighting and these people are worth trying to save, even if it's hopeless. And in that moment, they hear horns. And fortunately, a force of elves has been sent from Lothlorien to aid the people of Helm's Deep. In regard to when elves and men stood by each other long ago against the forces of darkness, they are here to honor that.
And this adds an archer brigade to their forces, which comes in handy.
Yeah, and so elves of Lothlorien join with them and are there and prepared to fight along with them. And the orc army arrives, and it is massive. Like it takes up the entire field before Helm's Deep. And, again, there's a few more moments of them just standing there. Again, a rain starts, and we're just seeing all these men arrayed on the walls, and we see these orc army like shouting and roofing, and the men preparing to fire their bows, and just again all the lead up to this battle. I mean, this is what makes this battle like. I mean, this is what makes this battle like the best battle, in my opinion, in Lord of the Rings, and why it made it one of my favorite movies. Like all of this, like it's just drawing you in, and you're like, man, holy crap! Like,
as someone who watched Game of Thrones before this, honest, like I may have had a more visceral reaction watching the Game of Thrones wars because I didn't know what was going to happen. But I think the staging in this is probably better than the best battle in Game of Thrones, and that's saying something because that show is basically the TV pinnacle of war and fighting. Lord of the Rings is the pinnacle of on screen in general.
Yeah, I mean, and thinking back to the Battle of Winterfell, like that's a episode that really tries to set up this like foreboding, like danger, like fear, and they do a good job. I mean, in the darkness, you're just seeing like like these things get slaughtered and parts of these forces get taken down, and and like it is overwhelming. But that's
the darkness is like cheating. You don't see the forces. You don't see how, like, that it's big, but you never see it.
Yeah. And it's also, there's a thing is that there's something about the Battle of Winterfell that's almost it's a little, I don't know. It's all internal. It's so big and epic almost that it's like too much. And even though this is on a scale that's as equally big and epic, it's almost like, okay, there's like an infinite amount of zombies out there almost. It's just like, this is really just like a onslaught that you are not even knowing how they will survive. And it's
basically like, who's going to kill the Night King?
Yeah, exactly.
Or are they all going to die?
Yeah.
Like, obviously that wasn't, no, I don't think anyone really thought that they were all going to die. So it was, how's the Night King going to die while they're all just biding time? Whereas in this, it doesn't feel like they can't just like go kill Saruman and these orcs disappear. They're like, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's, you don't understand. Like, this battle has to truly be won. It needs to be like won by men versus all these orcs, and the odds just seem insurmountable.
And that's why I think it's a little more similar to the Battle of the Bastards.
Yeah, I would think so. I can definitely see that. I mean, and I will say this though. I mean, love Helm's Deep, but like, I would say Battle of Bastards is one of the best like choreographed or like shot battles ever made.
I think that's the battle that I like in terms of quality. That's the best in Game of Thrones, and it's the only one that could compete in terms of like sheer like watching a battle happen.
Yeah, it really. I mean, again, we're talking about Game of Thrones now, but I want to give credit to that scene as being just definitely one of the best internal like war battle scenes of pretty much any one I've ever seen.
But we'll get to the big reason why I think the two share a strong similarity. And I think you have an idea of what.
I think so.
Yeah.
But so we're preparing. They have bows trained and ready. These orcs are like stamping and they're getting ready to just, come upon them. And some old man just accidentally looses an arrow. Boop. And all the orcs stop at one of these orcs dying. And all the people are looking around. They're like, what the, like, who fired? And the orcs are like, fucking kill him, take him, boom. And they start attacking. They run up on the walls and they start trying to put these ladders up on the walls and they start raining down arrows. I mean, they're just giving them volleys after volley, punching down the lines and killing orcs. But these orcs get up there and they start, picking up these ladders, and men start getting up on the walls. And then we just have, I mean, in this, it gets chaotic. It's literally back and forth where you're just having, they're shooting them, they're getting on the walls. Like, men are starting to get, cut down.
Gimli starting his count up.
Yeah, Legolas and Gimli, we get this, one of the, most amusing and fun things in Lord of the Rings is watching this rivalry between Legolas and Gimli, trying to literally score out who gets the most kills. And we just, we get this continuation, this interaction, all these things, and we're cutting back and forth to different scenes, but, basically the battle's ongoing. And there's actually literally a point where Theoden, it shows him, he goes, "This is all you have, Saruman? Is this all you have for us?" Where, I mean, basically they're holding them off. I mean, the wall, it's a wall in a castle, and like for these things to win, they have to literally, keep getting up the ladders and kill enough men on the walls that they overtake them. Except that Saruman knew of a weakness in Helm's Deep that Grima Wormtongue told him about. That there was a small gate, a small hole down at the bottom of the wall, and there are being loaded a bunch of bombs, basically. I mean, we don't understand necessarily what they are. It's made clear to us as we get it. Like, it's a black powder inside of a metal thing. And we see it's being loaded up with many of these steel, spiked devices that are full of that black powder. And we see one of these orcs running along with this like in lit torch, this like sparking and fusing. And Aragorn says, take him down. They fire. Like they put arrows and arrows into this guy. And it doesn't matter. He makes it in there. His literally body flies in, and boom, the entire wall of Helm's Deep is blown asunder. Men are flying off the wall. Rocks are falling down, crushing orcs and more men alike.
And their primary defense has been breached.
And now it has been breached. But there is a army of elves behind that, so these orcs start spilling in. We see, men have fallen off the wall. Gimli falls, and, he jumps down and, into the fray of orcs to cut them down, falls into the water, is now like drowning under the water. So Aragorn, leads his men in there to cut down the orcs and literally get in there while they evacuate everybody off the wall and into the proper of Helm's Deep. And they start fighting and cutting down. And during this time, we see Legolas, I mean, doing some cool stuff, sliding down a stairway, and they're just, cutting down. They save Gimli from drowning. And eventually they come to the point where Théoden says, all right, get your men back in here. Like, pull them back now. It's all good. And the leader of the Lothlorien elves, Haldir, in this moment is battling off orcs that are, on the wall and surrounding him, and he is cut down. And, Aragorn fights his way to him, and this is like a guy, a person that, we can see even in the movie that Aragorn's known for a long time, a man of honor that brought these elves here to defend these people. And, he has to be there for him to fade. But Aragorn leads the rest of the men that can back into Helm's Deep. And at this time, the gate is breached. The front gate of Helm's Deep is breached. And Aragorn and Gimli, make their way around and literally like jump onto the, the long bridgeway.
You'll have to throw me.
Yeah. And this echoes back to Fellowship of the Ring, where literally, Gimli's like, nobody tosses a dwarf. And, makes a leap and almost misses it. But luckily he's grabbed by the beard. So Aragorn tosses him across, and they basically defend this causeway, just the two of them just hacking it out against orcs while they can repair the door behind them. And eventually they make their way. They get on a rope, and they're, pulled up and make it back into the castle. Again, we're going back and forth between scenes during this time, but they're defending this outer barrier and just trying to shoot down the orcs. But at this point, it's, to where this gate is going to be breached soon. And they basically start having everybody even retreat further into the castle of the of Helm's Deep, into the like the hold. And it's come down to where it's hey, it's doomed at this point. Like they have like a few hundred more men, and again, there's still more than 1,000 orcs out there to fight. And it looks like it's it is there's no hope here. But in a moment, Aragorn looks and he sees that there is some light beginning to come in one of the windows. And there's a moment that I didn't mention, but it was that Gandalf told him when they were leaving Edoras that he would look for him at the light of the fifth day. Look to the east, is what he said. And Aragorn sees that light coming in, and he goes with Théoden, and he, basically inspires him. He says, if we're going to go out, then let us go out, let us go out in glory. Let us ride out with me, and let's face them out there. We'll, and he says, all right, all of us, and they get their horses together, and they prepare a charge, a cavalry charge all the way out. And they ride out forth, and literally cutting down every orc along the way through Helm's Deep, just cutting them all down and, forcing their way deep out into the midst of all of the orcs, which at this point, I mean, they have killed a fair amount. I mean, I don't know how many this army is supposed to have. I think it's supposed to be 8,000 or something. And they probably cut it down to 3,000. And there's probably a few hundred of them left. So they're still probably outnumbered 5-1 at least. But they cut their way out there, and they're basically in the middle of this orc army on their horses, all battling it out. And where from the east, where the sun is rising, we see Gandalf and Éomer leading a Rohirrim army of more than 2,000 men that basically come down the hill. And even when the orcs try to put their pikes up to stop their charge, they the sun comes, and Gandalf is using his magic to illuminate and blinds the orcs, forcing their pikes up and out of the ways and fear in their hearts. And the Rohirrim clash into the orcs and just tear through them. This cavalry just rips through all of these infantry orcs and cuts them down, and basically comes to the rescue and saves the day. And they conquer the day, after all. So yeah,
man wins out.
Yeah. Which, here's an interesting thing from the books. Something you probably never even know or suspect or have any reason to have an even inkling of, which I understand why they didn't put it in the movies. But so in the books, right, Rohirrim show up, definitely a thing, right? But lots of the orcs run away. They flee. And when the orcs go to flee, what they find behind them is an entire forest. An entire forest has literally appeared behind them on the field of battle, from where they had entered before. There's now a forest, and basically all these orcs that enter there don't come out.
Wait, I think we get that in the movies, right?
Oh, maybe you do get that in the movies.
Yeah, I distinctly remember
again,
orcs charging
scenes
into the forest.
Yeah, that's right. Extended scenes. There is an extended scene for that down to too. Yeah, theatrical version. That's not in the theatrical version, but I guess I almost forgot that it was in the extended scenes. Yeah. So in the extended scenes, we do actually get them charging into the forest. And the forest is, not happy.
Again, another thing where we get payoff of Merry and Pippin's work.
Yeah. And that is directly a result of basically the forest of Fangorn literally going, going out there to like seek revenge on these orcs. And, like basically all of that army, there is none of it left. Like they are all conquered not only by the Rohirrim and Rohan, basically the defenders of Helm's Deep and the Rohirrim, but the forest. So,
and it's a glorious battle that it is.
Yeah, and we do get some interactions basically at the end, where it's like kind of an ending of the movie, and Gandalf talking to Aragorn, and how like, hey, now like now we're sort of now we're in the end game. But yeah, and that's basically the end of their portion of the story. Like they conquer the day at Helm's Deep.
Yep. And Gandalf warns that Sauron will retaliate, and so that's the movie. That's the Two Towers.
Yep, that's it.
And like I said, I'm inclined to agree that's the best of the three.
Yeah, and
or it's at least my favorite of the three. The Return of the King has a certain something about it that made it the most satisfying to watch, and we'll get to that.
But it's almost easy. Again, the Two Towers
has the resolution.
Yeah, exactly. Return of the King has the resolution. It not only has like an epic, amazing battle, but we have the ending there. You can't not like the ending. Like you can't feel something like satisfying about the story coming to a conclusion and everybody actually winning out against evil. Because even Two Towers ends in some ways, again, on some good notes, like they conquer Isengard and they, turn back their army, but that's not even like the main bad guy. That was like the second bad guy, basically.
One thing I will say about the Two Towers, now that I think about it, and it kind of goes to show, because it was the first thing we talked about, but it's not a ton of the movie. Frodo and Sam are definitely more of a sideline in this movie than they are in Fellowship or Return.
Mm-hmm.
Like the main plot of this movie is really focused on Aragorn and Rohan. I like, and it feels that more than it does in any other movie, because basically what happens with Frodo and Sam is that they make it to Mordor, but then they have to back up, and then they're basically sidetracked for half the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it sort of feels like a detour for Frodo and Sam. It doesn't feel like they're really getting anywhere.
Yeah, well, they get to they're near Mordor. They're basically traveling.
They got to Mordor in like the first, but that's like within like the first third of the movie. Then like the next 2/3 of what they do is basically being almost taken away from Mordor.
Yeah, they are technically diverted. Osgiliath is still being literally on the doorstep of Mordor, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just something about this movie. There's just so many things. There's so many, there's kind of more at stake in some ways, and it gets that point across to you. It makes you feel the battle is so satisfying at Helm's Deep, because it's not just like, it's not just a fight, but like there's so much more kind of going on to it. There's so much to it. There's fun in Helm's Deep as well. Again, Gimli Legolas, like your account, like there's like you gotta toss me, and like valiant moments, just lots of valiant moments.
I will say, so I compared it to Battle of the Bastards, and the specific thing is them looking to basically what feels like the East in both Battle of the Bastards and in Helm's Deep, and seeing the troops come up. But you know what? And it was true in Battle of the Bastards, and it was true in Helm's Deep. Actually, you know what? In Battle of the Bastards, it felt like less of a surprise. I forgot about Éomer and his roving troops. That's not what I expected to come save the day. I expected the Ents to show up. I expected that to be the saving grace, and in a way that was part of it. But I forgot about the Rohirrim.
And I understand. Yeah, I kind of get that, because I feel like in my first time watching it, I kind of forgot that they were a thing too. I thought it was just like, oh, here they are. They like killed the guys and they like went off and stuff. And so like, again, in my simplified understanding as a kid, I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's right. He brought all those guys on horseback. Like there was a whole nother army out there. Oh my God.
Yeah. It worked. Like I was like, I knew that they were going to win, but I didn't know how. And when I realized that was how it was so good. It was so satisfying.
Yep. And I mean, yeah, and plus it's just, I mean, literally I can hear the music in my head, in that moment when they're like clashing down, like the score for that moment is like,
we didn't
perfect.
we didn't talk about this in Fellowship, but that's such good music.
Yeah, no, I know. It's the music of the, like, there's so much, the music sets so much tone in this movie. It cannot be understated. So, but yeah, I just I literally, it's hard to, out of my head. I can hear that like piercing kind of valiant like theme and tone that comes from the music that's playing right there when they're coming down and like saving them. It's just like it's this redeeming, like, you're like, oh yeah, like, it's perfect,
All right. So, let's
let's see if there's any talking points. Is like, is there anything you want to mention, ways that you felt about things?
Well, so I mentioned that this of the three movies, I think this one's probably my favorite. I always like to I find that characters are typically the thing that I grab onto most in movies, and in this movie, the characters, like in each of the three sort of plot lines going on, there, I think what helped me grab onto them was that I cared about these characters. Like Fellowship really earned me liking these people. And so when I get to see more of them in this movie, and like they're going through hard times, but to see them all basically succeed in the end, it feels so great. It feels so earned in a way that Return of the King pulls off, but like in this little way, the Two Towers gives me something satisfying. I mentioned earlier that I think Smeagol is a highlight of this film, and I stand by that. I think watching him do his little Smeagol stuff is it's just hard to look away from. Like there's a reason why you do the little Smeagol voice. It's because it's iconic. Like it's like funny, but like so seriously taken in the film that it's not funny at all. Like he is a sinister, pathetic little thing, but I don't know. Yeah.
No, I actually really like that take. I mean, that's an interesting, it's not like I hear many people say like, I really liked Smeagol from Lord of the Rings, but that is a more interesting way to look at it. And honestly, when you say that, he is a more, like all the other characters, of course we love them and they all have their places and things, but to say he is a more nuanced character, he really is a more interesting character with a lot of like depth. Like a lot of people will simply ask, like, who is this guy? Like, we know like Aragorn's like, hey, he's like a ranger and he's kind of a big deal. And Legolas, is a little two-dimensional. Like he's just a really good elf archer guy.
Yeah.
That's like I think they might say he's a Prince of Mirkwood. Gimli is just like a dwarf guy, right? Like there's layers to Frodo and Sam a little bit, but yeah, it's a good point that you make there. That Smeagol is a really standout character in this movie. I mean, but it's really, I think it's really, it's very intelligent of you to notice that, I think.
Well, see, here's the thing, like kid brain me watching these movies, Smeagol was like essentially a cartoon character in the middle of the movie. So like I gravitated towards like the first time I saw him, like I didn't see the movie. I just saw him as a thing within the movie. And I heard like his voice and I was like, that's interesting. That grabs my attention, like very much so. And so I just think he like is a iconic movie character. Like I would like, I think Smeagol and Gandalf are the two like most iconic characters. Like the characters without watching the movies. You had like they have this basic sense of them. Like once you like figure out who they are, you get it.
Yeah.
And there is still layers to it.
Yeah, no, I think that is a good commentary. And I think you make a great point there. Sometimes it's interesting because you watch these so recently. I think you have even in some ways like a better, you might have like a better, just because you're coming at it with like a fresh, an adult, mature way to watch the movie. And it's unfortunate that you didn't get to watch it like fresh, but like, because mine is so based on how I was a kid. So it's like,
look, there are some rooted kid stuff in this. Like I definitely have some child affection for Smeagol as a character. It's a character who brought me a lot of like humorous joy, like doing the like voice, or you doing the voice. I've always loved how you do it. You're so good at it. And but yeah, so he's just like as an actual character in the movie, so serious, so like so nuanced. But as a character in pop culture, like he just like exists, and Smeagol. You can just do the voice, and it's Smeagol.
Yeah, no, I feels it. Stupid nasty fat hobbits.
Speaking of the stupid, nasty fat hobbits, Merry, Pippin, I think are just so delightful. Honestly, the Return of the King, you don't get as much fun-loving Merry and Pippin, and in Fellowship of the Ring, you get their like second breakfast and stuff like that. But in this movie, it like you get such extended scenes of just them and Treebeard that you really get a sense of like you just really fall for these two characters in a way. Like they feel like tertiary essentially in the first movie. They're just kind of there. I like that they definitely take on more of even more of a primary role in Return of the King. Sorry to say that they don't take on they become like they have a real like role in Return of the King. And in Two Towers, that's where it starts. I mean, like they have a real journey that they go on. Return of the King, what makes it interesting is that they get split up. That's the most fascinating thing about their arc in that movie, because it forces them to really be who they are. But in this movie, you get a sense of who they were in the Shire, but you get a sense that they are changing. They are becoming something else. You see Merry becoming more serious, more like impacted by the severity of the situation. And you see Pippin basically, like when he has the idea to like basically divert Treebeard towards Isengard, that turns the tide of the war. Yeah, no, seriously. And yeah, no, I like that we get these moments with them, because it's still a little bit of comic relief, but again, you get it makes a good point, is that again, it's just like famous quote, you'll hear it like all the time and stuff, and it's actually from, I think, The Hobbit, where Gandalf says, like Galadriel asks him like why The Hobbit, and he says, well, God, I can't get the perfect quote, but it's basically like, that people think that it's like, big actions like to stop evil, but I think it's like small, little actions, like small kindnesses and things. And he's like, and that's why, I like Bilbo Baggins, because he gives me hope, right? Because he's just like, hobbits just are like small, kind creatures that just do small, kind things. And Merry and Pippin, even from day one, like that they just have this, goodness and this kindness and this want to do good. And that leads, them to push Treebeard and try, again, Pippin, like a little bit of a, trick. He's like, oh, go this way and stuff. Instead of forcefully trying to compel. I mean, like, would a man interacting with Treebeard been able to, get him to do, like, get them to end up siding with them and helping them? Probably not, because they would have probably tried to be forceful. Especially a dwarf, like, probably would have not been able to make it happen. Even an elf, like, might have been more aloof. They might have just been like, all right, whatever you want. And like, hey, you're like an ancient tree thing, and I'll just respect whatever you say, like, because that's just how it is. But like hobbits, like their way of going about it, like, again, it's something that only they probably could have achieved. Just like for Frodo and Sam, you think like, could a man have made that journey? Like, potentially, but like they probably wouldn't have cast it into the fires, or probably wouldn't have made the journey to begin with, because it would have corrupted them. Yeah, it would have corrupted them, or they would have died. They wouldn't have been able to make, whatever it was, for many reasons. Like hobbits were the only ones that could have made that journey, basically. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing to see, that their role, that though it seems like hobbits are small and insignificant, is these small and very, inherently good creatures of Middle Earth that were able to do such big, amazing things. Yeah. So I really find it fascinating that if you really think about it, Pippin and Merry, I think Merry's purpose was basically revealing to Pippin the severity of the situation, and then Pippin's the one who basically diverts Treebeard in such a way that basically wins the battle. Like I mean, they could have prevailed the battle theoretically without the trees, but the trees being there and the trees capturing Saruman basically sets the table for the beginning of Return of the King.
Yeah, I mean, to say so, like the finale of one, like they prevent Saruman from engaging and rearming his army and bringing more army. I mean, like again, his machine wasn't stopping. He was probably producing more orcs and more weapons. Even though he sent most of his force out, like he would have just had more of them coming. And if any of his army had been able to retreat, like if 500 to 1,000 orcs escaped, that's enough to wreck the countryside on their way back. And there's nobody defending the countryside anymore. Again, well, Éomer's men were out there, but and a massive amount of creatures like that that's just directed to sow chaos across like Rohan, where after their army's been shattered would have been. I mean, it would have been like still the end of Rohan in a sense. Because how would they have been able to recover? How many people would have been left defenseless? How much chaos would they have wrought while Saruman was still able to bolster himself up again and just come right back at him? And so I think, like it might seem like what did the trees actually do, but it's more like
the trees did so much.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, again, they captured like the next thing, even so let's say Rohan like completely destroyed all of Saruman's army. The next step would be that they'd have to go face Isengard. And if we look at it, if we're trying to do like a logical thing,
the orcs make their way back to Isengard. He replenishes his Isengard troops.
Yeah,
and really they have no ability to attack Isengard.
Yeah. And then Rohan spends their time trying to defend or do something again, fight Isengard. And when Gondor calls for aid, they cannot come.
Yeah,
and the battle at Minas Tirith is not won.
Yeah,
and the shadow takes over everyone. So it is, I mean, it is key. Again, like, it is a separate thing, but it is key to the overall, like, them winning, winning the war. And again, if they don't and now you might say like, oh, well, even if Minas Tirith, Frodo still puts the ring away. But again, the point of the battle at the Black Gates was not that they were going to win it. It's that they were going to divert Sauron's attention long enough for Frodo to be able to get the ring to the volcano.
But we'll cover that in Return of the King. In fact, I want to, like, Frodo and Sam, we get more of their connection in this movie, but I think, again, I feel like they are the most sidelined in this movie. Mm-hmm. If I had any criticism, it's that Frodo and Sam's are they're overshadowed by the other plots, and they're overshadowed by Smeagol in this movie. And which is not to say, like, I still think they're really good characters. I think they shine much more, especially Sam is going to shine far more in Return of the King. So I want to probably talk a little more about them in the next movie. Let's cover Gimli Legolas again. Still, like, you're right, Legolas is kind of a two-dimensional character. I think Gimli's more well-rounded. I see him making more changes. Like, I think Legolas has one line that he says in Return of the King that shows his sort of arc of change, but he's kind of fundamentally the same person that he began.
The only thing in the books and basically in the movies that Legolas and Gimli do is they serve as companions and counsel to a point, but they really just show in their arc is that an elf and a dwarf become friends over time.
Yeah. But I feel like Gimli, like, maybe it's just revealing more of what dwarves are because he's the only representation of dwarves. I feel like Gimli has a sort of feeling more free and like less of a need to basically put upon dwarves are like this and dwarves are like that. And he's more just like akin to just like be part of the fray and be another person helping out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so they're cool characters. Let's talk about the royal family of Rohan, Theoden, Éomer, Éowyn. So Éomer, he's, you don't really get a lot of him. He's just kind of there.
Yeah, he's there for a moment and then he's not, and then he shows up at the end.
I remember like basically watching the movie and being like, oh, I didn't know Carl Urban, the actor, I didn't know he was in this. And then I was like, man, this dude's in Lord of the Rings, he's in Star Trek, he's in the MCU. What a nerd. But yeah, so cool guy.
Billy Butcher.
He is Billy Butcher.
Yeah.
Theoden, I think I feel like I had seen the scenes of him like all like white and weathered before. And so I always knew of this character. And like when I saw him in the movie, I was like, oh, it wasn't really interesting to me to like see this like old withered manipulated king. When it was revealed that he was under a spell and he was like much younger than he was, and like the color returned to him, I was like, I never knew that that was a thing. That's really cool. And I think honestly, as a whole, Theoden's not the most like deep, like rich, like character, but I think he does a good job of portraying a king, a lord, and I think he serves as a basically a something for Aragorn to watch and learn from, and like, and in a way, like Aragorn doesn't have too much to learn, but this is sort of like his rolling inspiration into the king he's going to become, is watching this man who does the day-to-day work of a king and like hearing his counsel and seeing what thoughts go through his head when his people are in danger.
Yeah. Speaking of, so I mean, one thing I appreciate that as well. I mean, I like Theoden, and you know, he's an imperfect man who's trying to make up for essentially like mistakes that he, I mean, like didn't make. I mean, but like he did. You know, he's taking responsibility for the fact that like he was under a spell, but like he's led his people to not be in ready, and
he entrusted Wormtongue into his council.
Yeah, you know, like, and that's and so he's suffered for it, and now he has to do the best that he can to defend his people. And you know, in the end, you know, and we see that he is flawed though. You know, he has like in the end he tries to give up.
Yeah,
he does try to, like, he thinks it is useless, and Aragorn is there to again just reinvigorate him and say like, well then, you know, if we're to end today, like let it be a glorious end.
Yeah, I like, I wasn't saying that he was perfect in any way. And I think like just as much as I feel like sometimes Aragorn needs to be convinced to make the hard decisions, this man needs some pushing from others.
Yeah,
and it just makes him feel like a real person.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And so and then the last person, Eowyn, I need to be honest, in this movie I don't really like Eowyn.
Yeah, she's just whatever. She's just like a lady.
In this movie, because I definitely did not go into these movies thinking that there was going to be some quasi implied love triangle between Aragorn, Eowyn, and Arwen. I was like, in the first movie, honestly, I never knew who Aragorn's love interests were supposed to be. So I went into the first movie like, okay, Arwen and Aragorn. Didn't know that, but that's cool. I hope they end up together in the end. And then in this movie, it's like Eowyn and Aragorn, and there's like little things hinting that maybe Arwen will maybe Arwen and Aragorn aren't going to be a thing, and maybe it's going to be Aragorn and Eowyn. And that I found kind of off-putting. I was just like, ugh, I don't like you. I already want Aragorn to be with Arwen. Like they're very cute together. And like to like see this, I'm just like, so you're just there to like give some like drama that I don't know.
That isn't really drama. Like it's like it was never gonna happen.
But here's the thing. Mm-hmm. I didn't know who I don't know who he ends up with watching this movie. So I'm just like, okay, so Arwen, maybe like and I also didn't know what the even star meant. And there's like visions of the even star breaking, I think, in Two Towers. Maybe it's in Return of the King where you see the vision. Mm-hmm. But I basically was left with the impression that there's a possibility that Arwen doesn't survive these movies, and that maybe Aragorn does end up with Eowyn. So, and that was a possibility where I was like, I would have understood that as a sequence of events, but I wouldn't have liked that. And so I didn't like Eowyn because of what I thought she could be leading to. And I think Return of the King treats her much better. Like, actually makes her something other than girl who is sad about her cousin dying and her uncle being manipulated and her brother being cast away, and then like when all of the other men in her life disappear, this new man shows up and she's really into him. That's kind of who she is. At least that's what the sense I get from her in this movie.
Well, I would like to say that I feel like in this movie, it's also like her Fellowship of the Ring introduction, where we don't get a lot from her. She's still very secondary to the movie, but what we get is we see that like she is kind, that, you know, she had to see a lot of suffering, that she is, you know, a woman, like, you know, we have an interaction where Aragorn and her, you know, where she's like, you know, using a blade, and she's like, oh, you know how to use that. Like, you know, she's a shield maiden, she's trained, like she does know how to fight.
Yeah.
And that she has a want to. She says she wants to fight, and they're like, no, you need to like watch after the people here in the caves, and like, you know, just make sure that they're all okay. You're like, you know, if anything happens, like you're the only last one to lead everybody.
But that all feels like set up to something to happen in the next movie.
Exactly. And that's pretty much what it is. She's not as well served in this movie, but that her purpose is to set her up for what she is in the next movie.
Yeah. And the caveat there is I like where she goes in the next movie. We'll talk more about that. And I recognize that she has to start somewhere, and she's not that big of a role in this movie, but it just sort of felt like every time I saw her, she was either like upset about, she just always seemed like so upset, so distraught, unless she was looking at Aragorn, like looking at Aragorn, like smile on her face, like anything else, like the weight of 1,000 like worlds is on her. And yeah, so I didn't love Eowyn in this movie.
That's okay. You know, like, I don't think you're meant to love her in this one, but you're meant to understand her a little better. And then when in the next movie, you know, she gets her time.
And yeah, and then Arwen and Elrond, I mean, that's kind of a small part of the movie.
Yeah.
I had like Arwen really in these movies she does a lot, but she doesn't show up a lot.
Yeah.
The things she does are significant, but she's not a major role. Same thing with Galadriel. Like, she's present, but you don't see a lot of her. And I feel like that's sort of the case with the elves in general. They're just kind of there to further things and to help. And which is fine, but it leaves them all fairly one-dimensional. I'd say Arwen and Elrond are more nuanced than Legolas is, but only in like mild ways, in the sense that we understand what their motivations are, whereas Legolas, you don't really get why he's doing this other than maybe some like elf like bond of duty, like he volunteered to help in the fellowship and he kept going, like, but we don't really know what his goals in life are, like, whereas like Elrond wants the best for his daughter and Arwen wants to fight for what she loves. Mm-hmm. She wants to preserve the things she loves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. What about Gandalf in this movie?
I was just about to say Gandalf the White. So Gandalf the Gray, he's a...
You know that it was going to happen, but is there any sense, like, how did that make you feel a little bit, or what, you know?
I gotta say, it was really cool to see him. Like, I knew who he was approaching him, but like when you see him, it's just like Gandalf the Gray is like this like classic old character. Like, you like I anytime anybody says Gandalf the Grey, I imagine him like in his wagon, getting into the Hobbiton and Frodo running up to him. Like, that is what I picture Gandalf the Grey is. This simple, like, he is powerful, but he's simple in his ways. Gandalf the White has this like immediate like presence and like grandeur and power to him that like for like the rest of him showing in these movies, I'm just like, Gandalf, you're so cool. Like, this is cool Gandalf.
I mean, I thought Gandalf the Grey was pretty cool too, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
Gandalf the Grey is like it. Gandalf the Grey is the Shire that Frodo can't return to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. That's well said.
And yeah, Gandalf the White is the change that brought out is what needed to happen. We didn't even talk about the I mean, it's not a big part of it, but we see the Balrog fight, and it's honestly kind of minimized as a thing, but he achieves this power when he kills the Balrog, like, and that's that's when he was still Gandalf the Grey, but like because of that, he's given these powers, and yeah, he's a cool guy.
Well, technically, he wasn't given the powers because he defeated the Balrog. He said he died. Like,
yeah, he died. Yeah,
and however, in a very rare, unique case, Gandalf technically being essentially what would you consider an angel in this universe. Gandalf and Balrogs are actually, and Sauron are all technically like the same sort of being, and Saruman. They're all the same sort of being. They just take on different forms. But technically when they die, like they are supposed to go back outside the universe, and essentially the greater, larger sort of like the god of the world, Eru Luvatar, said, your purpose is not fulfilled here. And he was sent back to fulfill his purpose, which was to guide the peoples of Middle Earth. Like he was originally sent to Middle Earth to guide people, to be a guide, but not to really interfere. And he was sent back this time to with the power, not taking a form of something that's, where his purpose is just to guide and not interact, but he was sent back in a form that would be able to truly stand up to the forces of evil that was, sent there to not just guide, but also defend and be active in that purpose. And he was sent back with the power to cast out Sauron and face Sauron truly, and, fight the forces that do what he really has to do to help those peoples.
Istari is what I found.
Yes, the Istari are like basically the wizards.
Yeah.
Or Mithrandir, his real name as a Maiar.
Yeah. So yeah, I get why Gandalf would be your favorite character in these movies.
It's just tight. So I mean, like one of the kids, like, it's just an amazing, awesome wizard character. Like,
he's cool, and I got Ian McKellen.
Yeah. And you can't even, like, again, I think so many of these people deliver great performances in this movie, like truly fantastic. But yeah, Ian McKellen just brings this deepness to this wisdom. I don't know if anybody else could have done a better job being Gandalf. Yeah.
And so I will say, this is not, so I said that by the end of Fellowship of the Ring, my favorite character was Frodo. By the end of The Two Towers, my favorite character, it gets a little wishy-washy at this point. I'm not sure who my favorite character is. Like, for the specific movie, the character who entertained me the most is Smeagol. And he's not in it that much, to be honest with you. But like, I just like the scene that stays with me most from this movie, well, quite honestly, the scene that I think of when I think of The Two Towers is Merry and Pippin meeting Treebeard, because that's the scene that I saw when I was a kid. Like, that's like one of the select scenes of that movie that I saw. But other than that, like, is Smeagol's conversation with himself. I find that to be one of the standout things. And so there's that.
Would you say it's your favorite scene as well?
In watching the whole movie, maybe I really like them walking out of Fangorn Forest into Isengard and seeing the leveled trees and just his immediate reaction. I really like that, to be honest. And seeing the troops run into the forest at Helm's Deep and being basically not coming out alive.
Excellent. Good to know that Murder Forest and Dead Forest and
the trees. Honestly, the trees are
my favorite part of the movie.
Kind of. Trees and Smeagol.
Yeah.
We need a Treagle movie.
Hot take. My favorite part of Two Towers are the trees and Smeagol.
Helm's Deep is Helm's Deep is just so much more. There's no individual scene that's the best scene in the battle.
Yeah.
That because it's like a whole chunk of the movie.
Are you sure it's not toss me? You'll have to toss me.
It's a good moment.
Yeah. No, I understand. It is such a.
What's your favorite scene?
Um, my favorite scenes. I mean, it's the again hard to say favorite scene, but the Gandalf chart again. That scene literally. Like I can see it in my mind and hear it in my mind. Like hear the music in my mind of the Éomer and Gandalf charging with the Rohirrim down to save the day. The moments, another ones I really like, the moments right before the battle when they're all just arrayed, like when the rain is coming down, it's just like kind of panning across and showing them on the wall, and just like again that moment where it's just like this mounting tension and how you're feeling like up to that moment, like before you're even really seeing all the orcs, like just them, like sitting there getting ready. Yeah, those are probably the ones that I and Gandalf revealing himself. Those are probably the
I was
ones.
gonna say the Gandalf revealing himself. That's another really strong moment. And I said when I think of Gandalf the Grey, I think of him on the cart. When I think of Gandalf the White, I think of him appearing in the forest.
Yeah, I mean it's just so again like that they've already again they created this tension, they created this like sense of mystery, the sense of like unease as they're walking through the forest, and now it's like their enemy, like the enemy's nearby, and like they're preparing, and we know that something's coming, and even again the music here is like dun 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 dun.
And
it's like got this like
at this
drum
point,
kind of in the background.
At this point, we had earlier heard Treebird say that the hobbits are being taken to the White Wizard.
Yeah, exactly.
In the forest.
Yeah, and they didn't. Yeah, they're like, oh my god, this tree just took them to Saruman. Like this is bad. Like, and now they're gonna have to fight Saruman again. If you don't know the story and you're literally just watching the first time and you literally have no idea what's about to happen, you're like, oh my god, they're about to go like fight Saruman right now. Like, what's gonna happen? And you're just like, bam, like, nah, man, it's Gandalf the White. Blah. It's a great moment. And yeah, so that's one that also probably stands out to me.
All right. So yeah, do we have anything else to cover on this movie?
Nothing I can think of presently.
Well, we have one more, so if we come up with anything, we'll have stuff to say.
Yeah. Remind me to ask you to mention Aragorn. There was something I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to kind of mention about Aragorn in this one, but I think it's actually way better served to have it in the next movie. So
I do want to talk more about Aragorn. He's the only character that I didn't really cover because like we get developments with him, but I kind of want to talk about him finalized in the next movie.
Yeah.
But
I think we will save that until next time. And so until next time, folks, this has been Robert
and Ryan.
Have a good one.
Yep.